Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our Eating Disorder Hope Google Hangout. We're so glad that you could be here with us today, kicking off this event as we start the National Eating Disorder Awareness Week. And we're so excited to have Dr. Kim Dennis here with us. Welcome, Dr. Dennis. It's so great to have you again.
It's really great to be here, and thank you so much for having me, especially this week.
I know this is such a special and important week, and we've been so privileged to have you here with us for previous Google Hangouts. But can you tell our audience just a little bit about yourself and your work in the eating disorder community?
Sure. So I am a psychiatrist by training and a certified eating disorder specialist, and I'm currently the CEO and medical director at Timberline Knolls Residential Treatment Center outside of Chicago, where we treat females only, adolescent girls and adult women with eating disorders and co-occurring disorders like substance use disorders, mood disorders, trauma, self-injury. And I've been working with eating disorders for
Dr. Kim, are you still with us? Hi, Dr. Dennis. Can you still hear us?
I can. I think my connection cut out for a period of time.
Oh, sorry about that. It happens, but we're glad you could come back and join us.
Glad to be back.
Yeah, it's okay. It's technology, but you were just telling us a little bit about yourself and your role at Timberline Knolls and just your experience in the eating disorder community.
Yeah. I don't know at what point it cut off, but I've been out here at Timberline Knolls for the past decade, treating mainly eating disorders, and specifically in women. Not that just women have them, it's just my particular area of expertise.
Wonderful. Well, again, thank you for joining us this morning for our Google Hangout as we kick off our events for the National Eating Disorder Awareness Week. And we want to kind of delve into a topic that is very important, I think, for, everyone who's in the eating disorder recovery journey. And I think a lot of people don't necessarily talk about it, but that's the topic of relapse. And, it is something that most people will experience in their recovery journey. And I think it can be very discouraging to go through it and feel like you're kind of being set back in your own recovery. Can you tell us a little bit, what exactly is a relapse episode? What would that look like in eating disorder recovery?
So it depends a lot on where you're at in the journey. But I think one of the things we know very clearly from the research about eating disorders is that perfectionism is a trait that predisposes people to have eating disorders. And that can be a real barrier when it comes to recovery, because perfectionists like things to be linear, quick. I want my recovery to happen effectively, efficiently, and in a very, straight line sort of way. And that's just not how recovery from an eating disorder works. So relapse could look like having a period of time where you're abstaining from eating disorder behaviors that characterize your particular illness. Eating disorders are highly individualized to the person, and there are nuances that are very specific to each woman or man or child that has it. So for one person, a relapse might look like skipping a snack that's part of a healthy meal plan. For another person, it might look like engaging in a binge eating episode. For another person, it might look like over-exercising. It might look like purging. And then there are a lot subtler forms of relapse as well. So if we define recovery as not only abstaining from eating disorder behaviors, but also maybe negative self-talk that goes along with having an eating disorder, right. The isolation and, trying to do everything on your own that goes along with having an eating disorder, then we might consider things like skipping a therapy appointment, part of relapse. Or we might consider, going to a scary doctor appointment all by yourself as part of relapse, rather than in a recovery model asking somebody to support you in doing something that's difficult. Or, seeing a picture on Facebook and thinking about yourself in very negative ways. I'm too fat, or I'm not enough of, I'm not as good as, so it's a very individualized definition, and it depends a lot on where the person is in the recovery journey.
Sure. Well, thank you for explaining that. I think that's really important for people to understand, that, there's not one fits all for everybody, just like the eating disorder recovery journey itself.
Yeah. Are
there certain factors that might make a person more susceptible to falling into a relapse in their eating disorder recovery? And if so, what might some of those factors look like?
Absolutely. And, we could look at two sides of the equation. One of the most common predictors of relapse or risk factors for relapse is isolation, cutting back on or restricting on support, starving yourself of support that we all need as human beings. So we see a lot of times when people step down from a residential level of care or even a day treatment level of care and go straight to outpatient visits once or twice a week, that can be a time rife with relapse, because a person is going from a very high dose of support to a very, very low dose. Right. So one of the things that we try to do is have people have graded reductions in the amount of the support that they're getting as they get stronger and stronger in their own recovery. And we also try to build community with people and help people build community, recovery community, connect people to other people who've recovered and who really benefit a lot from helping other people recover. So one of the biggest factors is isolation. Another big factor is co-occurring illnesses. We know that people who have multiple disorders that they're battling are at higher risk of developing periods of relapse with their eating disorder. And the co-occurring disorder might be a mood disorder like depression. It might be a substance use disorder. It might be an anxiety disorder. So it's always important to make sure that we're looking at people and looking at ourselves holistically. You know, I'm a whole person. I am not just a person with an eating disorder or who's recovered from an eating disorder, but there are lots of other stressors that people face in life. So isolation on the one hand and other stressors on the other hand are probably two of the biggest risks that leave people more susceptible to relapses.
Thank you so much for explaining that. And, you know, I think relapse is a lot more common than people understand. Can you kind of share with us maybe some of the statistics, on the experience of relapse in the eating disorder recovery journey?
Absolutely. And I think one of the most important reasons for having this discussion today is that relapse is something people feel a lot of shame about. And I think if more people were open about the experience of relapse, that people would not feel that much shame about it, and they would understand it as a step along the way to recovery. In the literature, it's about 30% of people who have eating disorders will relapse. 30% will stay in recovery, and 30% tend to struggle on and off over the course of many years after they've sought treatment. A lot of people come to treatment thinking, I'm going to do treatment and then I'm going to be cured. You know, and I'm never going to have any eating disorder thoughts or behaviors again. And that's really a setup for failure. You know, I have not worked with one single person here at Timberline Knolls who has experienced zero symptoms of relapse in their journey to recovery. I've certainly worked with people who it takes, you know, and in the substance use world, we have statistics looking at how long after a person first seeks treatment until they get 1 year of continuous sobriety. And for substance use, that figure is about 7 years. And I think it's probably similar for people with eating disorders. So we really try to support people, educate people that this is part of the process. We talk about relapse being a relapse forward rather than a relapse backwards. And a very, not only not a bad thing, but something that is very, very useful to recovery and can actually propel you forward to a state of being fully recovered.
I really like that. I think just reframing what relapse is essential to breaking the shame and the stigma that often is associated with relapse, and helping people understand that you can still be in recovery and this is just part of your journey.
Yeah, absolutely.
So with that understanding, you know, that relapse is part of the journey, how can a person continue in long-term recovery, even with the experience of relapse episodes and, you know, whether it's multiple or just one or whatever that might look like? How can a person continue their long-term recovery?
So the biggest thing that a person can do to make something a relapse forward is to share it. The longer somebody keeps that a secret, the worse effect that's going to have on the recovery, and the more shame it's going to carry, and the more power to drag them back down into the disease. So tell on your disease, you know, tell on the symptoms that you're experiencing, tell on the relapses, share it with somebody else, because the fact is nobody on this journey has ever stood up from an eating disorder and walked the million steps it takes to recover without a stumble. Everybody has stumbled. The people who stumble and make it are people who stumble with their community, with their treatment team, with their support system, who sometimes can lift them up if they need to be lifted up, or who sometimes can say, yep, I see, that's a stumble. I'm here to support you as you stand back up and take more steps forward. And it really is a dance of a couple steps forward, a little step back, a couple steps forward, a little step back. And it's a journey, it's a long process. So the biggest thing and the best thing a person can do if they're experiencing symptoms is to share it with somebody that can help you.
That is such a helpful piece of advice. And I think too, relapses can occur at any stage of recovery. So even for someone who may be years and years in recovery, especially from co-occurring disorders, there's always the chance that something can come up and trigger a relapse. How would you encourage someone who has been in recovery for long term and has suddenly experienced, a relapse or a setback in their eating disorder? That can, definitely be discouraging. How would you encourage that person?
Yeah, that can almost be more difficult because, we have this idea that, okay, you've been free of your eating disorder for 5 years, 10 years. What is wrong with me that now I'm supposed to be this, this fully functional person who is recovered, past tense, no further symptoms ever. And going, being in recovery with that mentality can make it really difficult if you do experience life stressors or experience a relapse, to reach back out for help. So one of the things I always let people know is, stay human. Stay human and hold on to your humanness. It's a beautiful gift. But even for that person who's been recovered for 10 years, who experiences a relapse, it's the same message. Do not be alone with that. Reach out for help. So, and one of the fruits of recovery that we get is we get people in our corner, that we can share anything with. And if I'm a person in recovery and I look in my corner and I've lost my people, then something is going on with me, on some level, that is not fully in line with what I would consider recovery. So it's important that people stay connected with loved ones, stay connected with honest, authentic relationships, so that if they do struggle down the line, they have someone to go to who can, again, be there with them, support them, not judge them, but help them to get what they need to get back up. I have a 1-year-old who is learning, he's learned how to walk over the past several months. And it's just a beautiful example of how people recover, and how people learn new things. He's fallen a million times and he just gets right back up and keeps right on going, with little support from me. But that's what we do in recovery, and that's what we as professionals do. And that's how we see the people that we help, hopefully, and I think anybody that's worked with a therapist who is shaming or is judgmental knows that immediately and usually withdraws. But there are people out there who are well-versed in supporting people over the long haul, loving them, accepting them, supporting them, and seeing relapses as learning opportunities and growth opportunities.
And I just love your description and your analogies. And I think all of that is just such an important way to reframe the perspective of relapse, because I think when people hear of relapse, there's so much fear associated with it. But I just love your analogy, even just to how your son has learned how to walk, that you just pick yourself up and you keep going and you keep taking the next step forward. And I think your phrase relapse forward is so great. And it really does help paint, the process of relapse in a positive light.
Yeah.
And as we,
it's important to educate families too, because a lot of times families are terrified that relapse means their daughter or their son is or their wife or husband is gonna die from the disease, and there's a lot of terror, and for good reason. People do die of these illnesses. But if somebody understands what it is and understands that their loved one is connected to help, it can be a lot less threatening of a situation for all parties involved.
Absolutely. And, you know, we're in National Eating Disorder Awareness Week talking and bringing to light a lot of these issues, which is so great. How can we continue to bring that message that, you know, relapse can be a positive part of your recovery? I think this is really important for a lot of people to understand. What, you know, you've kind of touched on it a little bit, but how else do you think we can continue to reframe this message and discuss relapse in a positive light?
Well, I think in a couple of ways, as professionals, we really owe it to our patients and their families to paint an honest description of what recovery looks like. That's one of the ways we can do it. We can also support people in recovery, like Nita does a lot of this. Eating Disorder Hope does a lot of this in sharing their stories openly and honestly, and what it took to get to a place of recovery. And not one personal story that I've ever heard says, I checked into Timberline Knolls on, you know, March 10th of 2008, and I've been recovered ever since. You know, I haven't heard those stories. So I think the more we support people in sharing what the journey looks like, the more we can reframe our own, as clinicians, perfectionistic views and minds, the more help we're going to be to the people looking for our help.
Absolutely. And Dr. Dennis, I think this is a topic that a lot of our viewers have either experienced personally or through a loved one. You know, like you said, some families are terrified of the prospect of their loved one going through a relapse. What encouragement might you offer today to someone who has either experienced a relapse or to family members who see their loved one going through a relapse today?
Well, for family members, if you know about the relapse, that's a very good sign. You know, that in and of itself is a great prognostic feature, because that means it's not a relapse that's in secret, which is the most powerfully negative type of relapse. If it's a relapse you as a loved one know about, you can support your daughter, your son, your wife, your husband in getting connected to the help that he or she needs to propel this forward. And you can let them know that you're there in a non-judgmental, in a loving and supportive way. For individuals who are experiencing these symptoms, if the only thing you walk away from this Google Hangout today with is a sense that you're not alone, and a sense that you're not bad, and that this might actually be something to help your recovery, I think this will be a successful interaction that we've had. So don't be alone with it. Connect with anyone you possibly can in the least threatening way possible to share what you're experiencing, and know that we're out here to help you.
Absolutely. I love that message of encouragement, Dr. Kim. Thank you for sharing that. And I think that's so important to continue to break the silence and the shame. And it's so easy to fall back into that pattern, that comes with having an eating disorder of wanting to keep everything secretive. But knowing that there's so many great resources out there available for anyone who might be struggling, whatever point of recovery they're in, that there's people out there who care.
Yeah.
And just kind of in closing, Dr. Dennis, can you tell us a little bit more about Timberline Knolls, and if someone is interested, where they might be able to find more about your organization and just the resources that are offered through TK?
Absolutely. So one of the ways you can find out more about us is through our website, which is www.timberlineknolls.com. We also have counselors available to speak with anyone who's struggling or a family member who has questions 24/7, and that number is available on our website as well. And we really offer co-occurring treatment, residential treatment here outside of Chicago for females only, girls and women with eating disorders and co-occurring illnesses. And that's, that can include a lot of different things: trauma, mood disorders, substance use disorders, self-injury. We use one of the treatment modalities that we use is dialectical behavior therapy. And one of the reasons that I think that works so well for the eating disorder population is the interpersonal effectiveness skills that it teaches. So it helps people be more comfortable being interdependent on other human beings. Again, being human beings that need other human beings in the ways that all of us do. It also has modalities to help with emotion regulation and mindfulness, just being able to be present and aware and comfortable in your own skin.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that, Dr. Kim. It's so great to have you again with us, and we just so appreciate and value your work in the eating disorder community. And just thank you so much again for your time and being here with us and helping us reframe what relapse is, and encouragement in knowing that regardless of what your experience might be in eating disorder recovery, you can continue to move forward.
Thank you again for having me, Crystal, and thanks for all of the wonderful, amazing work you guys at Eating Disorder Hope are doing.
Thank you, Dr. Kim. Well, just for our viewers that are watching, again, thank you for joining us, and we hope that this message has brought you some encouragement in your own journey today. And we hope you'll continue to join us through the rest of National Eating Disorder Awareness Week. We have some more great events lined up as we continue talking about many important subjects that are crucial for those who are recovering in the eating disorder world. So visit our website at eatingdisorderhope.com. And again, if you're looking for more information on Timberline Knolls Residential Treatment Center, timberlineknolls.com. Thank you again, Dr. Dennis. We really appreciate your time, and I hope to see you soon. Thank you.
All right. Take care.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.